What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hops Geek News, comic book podcast that also talks about movies, TV shows, and we typically feature Beer of the Week. Today's episode, we're going to give a little review on Across the Spiderverse, the hottest movie that's out there right now. We've both seen it, and we're going to dive in and give you some thoughts and things of that nature. First things first, go ahead, follow us on social media, any podcasting platform. Both can be found at Hops Geek News. Too easy, right? And then if you feel like supporting the show and everything that we do, go ahead, patreon.com/hopsgeeknews. And also, if you want to support, some cool artists, if you're on YouTube, I got this really cool Miles Morales painting behind me from JR from the Hop Heroes podcast. Shout out to him. And like I said, we're going to talk Across the Spider-Verse, little different format, no news. That'll be next week. Dropping a little bonus episode for you. My beer of the week is called Augie, which is a hazy 7% IPA from Great Notion Brewing. I don't know. I just didn't really theme this beer. I didn't really have a beer that fit the theme, but Lauren does. So Lauren, what do you drink?
When you have Great Notion, you really don't need to theme it.
That's true.
You can do whatever you want. So my beer is from Calusa, one of my favorite breweries here in Florida. It's a New England IPA at 7% ABV, and it's called Little Whip, not to be confused with Thwip.
Whip.
So they just need to add a little tea at the beginning, and I got it in my Spidey glass with the 3 Spider-Men pointing at each other.
I wore that shirt opening night, I had to.
So I have this one sweater. I'm actually wearing it right now, and it's from Target, and it was released, I think, in February for Black History Month, and it's this gorgeous art with Miles Morales and Black Panther and Storm, and they had stuff in the kids section and the adult
Oliver
section.
picked up some of the Spider-Man stuff that they had. I picked him up some of that stuff because in the kids section they had a whole section of the Spider-Man.
Yeah,
they had like Black Panther, which I picked him up some. Miles Morales, because Miles is his favorite hero, so I picked up my son some of that, and that the button-down Marvel Spider-Man shirt is what he wore opening night. Kind of twinned it up there a little bit, but
nice. I hope this artist does more stuff because he's phenomenal. I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head, but yeah, I got it before we went to Disneyland because it was going to be colder than expected
and rainy.
It's nice. It's a very cozy hoodie. I bought the sweatpants too.
Yeah, it's like 95 degrees outside. It's a little warm in here. I'm just feeling like a hoodie. I got this Barbarian hoodie on the back. It says "Don't be a dick," which can tie in with this movie because Miles' whole thing is like, God, all these Spider-Men just being a bunch of dicks. And in real life, just don't be a dick, man. Words to live by, right?
Definitely.
Words to live by. So let's talk Across the Spider-Verse. It is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, part 2 out of the 3. Part 3 is going to be Beyond the Spider-Verse, which will release March 29th, 2024. This film, star-studded cast. Shameik Moore, who plays Miles Morales. Haley Steinfeld is back as Gwen Stacy. Brian Tyree Henry is back as Jeff Morales. Luna Lauren Velez is back as Rio Morales. Jake Johnson, Peter B. Parker. Oscar Isaac, of course, is Miguel O'Hara. Jason Schwartzman is Spot. Issa Rae, Jessica Drew. Daniel Kaluuya, I can never pronounce his name correctly, but he is the GOAT. Hobie Brown. Karen Sony,
he was awesome.
Yes, is Pavatar. I cannot pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. You guys know how bad I am at this. Shea
A lot of these names, though, don't ring off the top of your head immediately. But if you go to IMDb and look at the pictures, you'll be like, oh.
Mandla Stenberg. Names me and pronunciations right. She is Spider-Bite, who is pretty cool. And then Andy Samberg is Ben Reilly. You'll get to know who that is. And then Jack Quaid is Peter Parker. So star-studded cast. This movie actually just completely blew away. It has a cinema score of 95%. It's got... Sorry, let me restart. This movie has an A cinema score, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's the 4th highest rated film on Letterboxd, the highest rated superhero film on IMDb, and it has the biggest domestic opening day of 2023 so far. In its opening weekend, it has actually earned $208.6 million worldwide, which I think the Into the Spider-Verse only earned like $300 million in its entirety. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if this hits $1 billion. Because this movie's going to have some legs.
I mean, it was definitely good. And obviously Into the Spider-Verse was better than people expected. But it's also, I think people are still getting excited to go back to the movies. And it was the first weekend for a lot of us for like summer break.
School's out.
So
I
feel
we
like
took the kids Thursday night. Like, hey, you've got like summer camp and stuff, but you don't have school. So let's go Thursday night. Let's watch Spider-Verse. And my theater was actually kind of empty, surprisingly. And I will say I'm really disappointed that my Regal Cinemas didn't have the collectible bucket and they didn't have the collectible ticket. I'm a little bummed about that, not going to lie, but that's a first world problem.
I didn't even look for any of that. So I went Sunday and our theater was full. But I went with all three of my kids, Kaylee's boyfriend, my mom, and Logan went too. Logan, who I've mentioned on here before, like did terrible. He did great. At about 2 hours, he started to get a little,
I mean, he's 5, so
yeah, just turned 6. But he brought all three of his I always want to say dolls, his action figures. He brought Miles, he brought Spider-Man 2099, and he brought Spider-Man. And I bribed him. I had chocolates in my purse. And so at like 2 hours in, he's like, "Where are those chocolates?"
Mom, the chocolate.
But at that point, like I looked at my watch and I'm like, how are they going to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes? Yes. Because I looked at the length of time before we went and I had no clue this was going to be. So obviously we were going to spoil the shit out of this.
Jeez.
I guess I did not remember that it was going to be to be continued. And like, it wasn't just like we wrapped up one thing and then it continues. Like they left one main story completely open and then they restarted a whole other story.
I saw somebody say that like the middle of the movie felt like the end of the movie and the end of the movie felt like a middle of the movie, which it's true.
Makes sense.
But this is the middle of a trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Like this is a testament to, I think, how good the movie was, is the fact that we both have, Logan 6, Harper 4. Both, like Harper sat through the film. She was invested from the get-go. 2 hours, 16 minutes is the runtime.
Yeah.
Or 2 hours, 20 is technically the runtime, but credits and things, right? The fact that they both sat still is a testament to how good this movie was and the artwork. Like,
oh my God, the artwork is phenomenal.
It took 3 years to do Hobie Spider-Punk's artwork, which is absolutely insane. 3 years for that. And it was incredible because in certain scenes, you'd see him walking through and it would be like all gray and then be colorful, and the things that they did, the layers,
every
layers.
Frame was an artwork.
Yeah, what they did in Into the Spider-Verse artwork wise, they turned it up to like a 15 in this movie. And there's this really beautiful scene later on. I know we're jumping ahead, but when Gwen's talking to her dad and the watercolors kind of start to bleed into each other, just beautiful.
Yeah. Every single color and mark and everything seemed to be completely intentional. There was nothing like, this is just to move to the next scene or whatever. Like every single bit seemed intentional. And yeah, that punk, what was a punk Spider-Man? Like they have, I saw his guitar. They already have his guitar out and it shoots webs.
Oh yes. Do they really?
Oh yeah.
It's at Target. I think webs. I saw that. I will say, did you have an issue hearing? Was your sound a little low, or by the time you went Sunday, I imagine your sound was probably pretty good?
It was pretty good, but there were a couple things that I heard people laugh at or react to that I didn't even hear. But that also, I don't know, could have been Logan, although honestly, he didn't really talk.
I couldn't really hear Gwen's opening. So the movie starts with Gwen, right? It kicks off. This is her and her universe. She's kind of recounting like she doesn't have a lot of friends. And it turns out that her one main friend in her universe was Peter Parker, played by Jack Quaid. Well,
which I thought was very interesting.
Yes. It was crazy how they tied that in.
But that was, I guess, because I was watching I fell asleep to watching one of the YouTube videos last night. Mm-hmm. And I guess there was like a comic history to it, but the whole like Lizard Man thing was because Dr. O'Connor's wanted to regrow his arm. So I thought that seemed a little random that like Spider-Man
knew that Gwen was Spider-Girl.
He did, and he wanted to be significant, but that it was interesting that was what he turned into, because the Dr. Connors thing made more sense. Like lizards have been known to regenerate their tails. So why not regenerate my arm? That's why I'm going to do research in this lizard. Maybe he was just interning for Dr. Connors. I haven't read the comic. I'd be curious to anybody who has, if there's any correlation or if they were just trying to do a nod in a different universe to Dr. Connors.
I think that's kind of what it was, because like Peter's always wicked smart, right? But it was clever how they did it, because so in this movie, they pretty much end up explaining that every Spider-Man has to go through a canon event, which we'll get to shortly. And we were thinking that like maybe Gwen's canon event was that her dad, because it's like every captain dies. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole point, is they basically trap Miles at some point and say that your dad's going to die.
You have to let him die.
That's your canon event. That's every Spider-Man goes through grief. Uncle Ben, Captain Stacy.
But they all seem like they have two. Well, because he already lost his Uncle Aaron, and now he's got to lose his dad too.
We're jumping ahead. Yeah, we'll get to that, because that was my question too. I will say, but I wonder if like she was thinking her dad would die, it'd be her canon event. But what if Peter Parker dying in her universe was her canon event? That like,
I feel like that was her canon event. So maybe grief. Uncle Ben's just like a I don't know. Cause like Andrew Garfield, I feel like his was Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, well, his
not necessarily
Stacy,
Uncle Ben.
And our Peters in the MCU was Aunt May.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though he had already lost Uncle Ben.
Right. And well, yeah, I mean, Uncle Ben was never really around, so he didn't like.
We didn't need to see him die again.
Well, but Uncle Ben in this universe didn't die like all the other Uncle Bens. Like it was Aunt May who took that place, right? So,
but he is mentioned, but they seem to be dealing well with their grief.
Anyways, her dad's a cop, so tries to arrest her and stuff, and then.
Dude, that scene was harsh.
It was harsh when she reveals herself because at this point, like,
yeah, and he's like still willing to arrest his own daughter.
Right. Well, I thought this was really cool how they brought in it's like a Picasso version of Vulture ends up in their universe somehow, and she's fighting.
Oh, it's a Renaissance version.
Yeah, it was the Renaissance, and then that's when Miguel and Jessica Drew show up, and they're all fighting and end up saving the day. Things collapse. She saves everybody, and then her dad shows up and tries to place her under arrest, and she pulls her mask off, and he still wants to arrest her, and it's just like. That was harsh, dude. Like your kid just you're still blaming your daughter for saying that she killed her best friend. Like you didn't no questions asked. He was still like, you're coming in with me. That was harsh.
Mm-hmm. I think it was just an immediate reaction where the cop took over, but that's not the first place he should have gone. But she needed that arc. Maybe that was her canon moment, was her dad turning on her.
No, I don't know. I think it's Peter dying, in my opinion, anyways. But
no, yeah.
I completely forgot the end credits from Into the Spider-Verse was Miguel and Lila, who actually in the comic books, Lila was modeled after Marilyn Monroe. Fun fact. And he got the little multiverse traveler thing. Like, and I feel like he was vastly different than the Miguel we got in this movie. The Miguel in this one, like he's like a vampire too. Did you catch that when he was like about to eat Vulture before Gwen showed up? It was kind of weird. I'm not sure.
I heard them joking about that, but I thought it was like just jokes or them being funny or something. I didn't pick up on that one fully.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what that was about. Like, there's got to be some more there because Miguel in this, he's out for blood, man. Like, straight blood.
I mean, it's so hard with some of these because like if it is true that if Miles' dad doesn't die, that the whole universe disappears, then he's in the right. Like, but that's also in all of these movies, that's the bad guy. We don't trade lives is, what Cap says. So that's the good guy thing. Like we don't sacrifice one to save many, but it makes sense that you would. And it makes sense that also, these anti-heroes, that's their MO.
Right. Gwen does go off with Miguel. That's like Jessica Drew basically convinces to join the spider cult. Right. And then that's when the movie picks up with Miles, which I liked his intro scene because the Spot, this is where we get introduced to the Spot. How clever was it that they throw it back to Spot was formed because it's the guy who got the bagel thrown at him in the first movie. And then they trash the whole laboratory and he becomes Spot. And then everybody's just making fun of him too. It's just like, that's brutal. Cause he was like, hey man, this is my first robbery. It's not even technically your ATM. Why are you going after it? Like,
yeah, he seemed like he was like truly trying to be a good guy at the beginning. But then when he's I'm your arch nemesis, Spider-Man.
Well, everybody kept making fun of him like, oh, villain of the week. It's like, Miles, you guys are literally creating something because Spot goes off to be like, all right, he learns by getting sucked in. He like jumps into his own butt. That was kind of funny. Like, did I just jump? But
you notice at the beginning of the movie, he was mostly white with some black spots. And then he learned that the black spots were powerful. And then at the end, he was mostly black with a few white spots.
Well, he learned the multiverse essentially. Now he's like the most powerful villain ever.
So what do you think, if anything, they're going to do with Donald Glover? Because my first thought was he's technically the MCU's Uncle Aaron.
He is.
But is he the MCU's Prowler?
I was very surprised by that. So after they do all that sorts of thing, Gwen goes to Earth where Miles is at and pretends that like, hey, I'm seeing you. But it turns out she's actually after Spot, which kind of sucks because there's that whole Miles, you're always late because every Spider-Man is always late and gets into this family. His mom ends up letting him go after he's grounded because he sees that he's really into Gwen, which is an interesting dynamic. Like I'm not convinced they're going to end up together, and I'm not sure that they should.
I don't think any Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy's end up together, and that was her whole thing. Which always ends badly.
One of the most beautiful shots, too, by the way, was that upside down when they're sitting upside down, looking at New York. Like that was one of the dopest shots that they have.
When I feel like it shows what a unique perspective all of the Spider-Men have of the world that everybody else doesn't.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, that was really cool.
But yeah, she's after Spot, and Miles was invisible and basically finds out that he's never going to see her again. She only came to see the Spot, and Jessica Drew was like, you screwed up, you let him go. And that's when he dives into the multiverse after her. And this is where everything kicks off. So they end up in, I can never keep my Earths correct, but in Pavatar's basically India, in the country of India. And this was a great, like, whole entire sequence. She's mentioned Hobie Spider-Punk a couple times, and he's like, oh, just a friend. You wouldn't like him, you'd like him. And then it turns out when they like show up because they're chasing Spot, he's like, you left a toothbrush. And he's like, a toothbrush? And he's like, and you're wearing my Chucks. He's like, oh, you didn't tell him about Hobie. Like, that was great.
Like, you sleep there?
You sleep there? Like, sleep there? She's like, yeah, you left a toothbrush. I was like, oof.
I like the whole chai tea thing before, or because I've heard that before. I've heard like how stupid it is to call it chai tea, that you're just being redundant.
Yeah. So yeah. You're calling it TT. Chai is tea. Yeah. You're calling it TT.
And of course, as soon as I heard the voice, I just heard, from Deadpool. 100%.
Yes, I was about to say the one shout out to Karan. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, because he plays Dopinder in Deadpool. And he plays, I love his character so much. Like, it was so rad. And his canon moments, Captain Singh, like his girlfriend.
So he didn't have it.
Yeah. And that's what kind of causes. So they save the day, essentially. And Gwen was trying to stop Miles. He thought he was trying to stop her from, or she was trying to stop him from saving Captain Singh, because she didn't want him to get hurt. But it turns out that, like, this is a canon event. I mean, we didn't know what that meant when it came up on her watch. And then it turns out that Captain Singh was supposed to die, who is Pavatar's girlfriend's dad. And he doesn't die, which causes like a big black hole. And at that point, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess you can see the whole universe is collapsing in on itself. But it looked like they had it pretty under control.
But this Spider-Man doesn't even seem like he's had an Uncle Ben die. Like, he seems like he's had nothing, because he's just very like, everything worked out for me. I'm so great. I'm so happy. I'm so cool.
He's like, oh, my hair is awesome. Your hair matches. He's like, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. Oh, I have no idea who you are. I mean, citizen.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that Pavatar's comic debut was in 2004, which began with a short 4 mini-issue series called Spider-Man India by Sharad I cannot pronounce this last name, but I'm going to try. Devarajan and Suresh Sitharaman. Oh, God. And Jivan J. Kang. I'm sorry to those creators. I am illiterate.
I'm sorry.
The character was heralded.
Their names. That's more than most people would do talking about Spider-Verse.
At this time, the character was actually heralded as the first trans creation, where instead of doing a translation of the original material for a foreign market, they actually chose to transcreate the character of Peter Parker into an Indian boy named Pavatar Brabhakar. I am so sorry. Who lived in Mumbai, here in Mumbai. The series had little fanfare, and the character disappeared for a while until writer Dan Slott gave him a leading role in his Spider-Verse comic event a decade later. And in this universe, the character lives with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Bim. He's friends with Mira Jane and fights demons after encountering an ancient yogi who grants him the powers of a spider. Like Peter, an early avoidance of responsibility results in his uncle being stabbed to death. His costume in the comics is much like an Indian-style take on the classic Spider-Man suit, but the movie takes the character and it gives him a drastically different appearance. And he kind of has like that yo-yo web bracelet type thing going on, which is like, the bracelets are big in Indian culture, which is really cool. And I really liked his costume a lot. And I like the way he fought. It was like an old ancient Indian kind of style way of fighting, I guess. And
yeah, and he was confident, but not a douchebag.
Yeah, no, he was super chilled. Like, it turns out, like, at the end, you see him and then Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, Gwen, they all show up and they're ready. Like, Miles got himself a squad.
Yeah. So when Penny Parker showed up and, you had Peter B. Parker and obviously, Gwen Stacy and everything, I wondered if John Mulaney was supposed to have more of a role and he didn't because he was in rehab. But that's just my own theory because I watched his stand up recently. But I hope he does, he showed up at the end. So I'm hoping that he's in the next one because I think that he just, adds a little bit of humor.
Well, I am interested now that you bring that up because Peter B. doesn't have a big role in this. He just kind of shows up. And it turns out even he knew that, like, Miguel explained the canon events, what happened, and is basically like, your dad's going to die in 2 days, Miles. You got to let this happen. Otherwise,
But I mean, you understand where they're coming
you
from.
get both sides for sure.
Yeah.
Miguel is definitely
black and white.
Yeah, nothing. It's a Spider-Man, right? Like nothing is ever black and white but the one theme that I really love with Miles is like, stop telling me who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do. Let me make my own path. Anybody can be a Spider-Man. You don't have to be like mopey and stuff, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really love about Miles. And that's kind of like, but Peter B though, he kind of does him dirty because he knew this was going to happen. And then he has a Mayhem is so cute. He has the baby, of course, with Mary Jane, it turns out. And the baby.
A Mayday.
Mayday, that's what it was. Yes. And she has like the little mask too. It puts on like, don't tell your mom.
She looks just like Mary Jane.
Yes. And he's in a bathrobe, but he really doesn't do a whole lot in this movie other than in the chase, kind of like explain. Real quick, by the way, I just opened up another beer called Static Profile. It's Project X, a beer plus art endeavor. And this is from Mother Earth Brewing Company out of Boise, Idaho, 7.5% hazy IPA brewed with Mosaic, Citra, and Raku hops. It's called Love Your Mother on the side. And the artist is artist Mr. Black. So that's what I'm drinking. We are kind of talking about, at this point, Miles gets trapped from Miguel. He traps him inside that little thing.
He busted right out of. Spider cage.
Shout out to Hobie, who taught him, because there was that scene when he was trying to charge up and blast the shield that the Spot put up. Hobie showed Miles his hands. He was like telling him to do the thing. And that's where Miles got the idea to pretty much electric and blow out. So again, Hobie, man, is a real one. What beer did you just open real quick?
I just opened Mas Chelada. It's a lager from, it's a spicy. From Calusa. It's only 3.7% because it's a michelada. So it's basically like half tomato juice, half beer. I love micheladas. And this just takes the ease out of having to make it on your own.
Yeah.
It is a Mexican style lager with tomato juice, lime juice, salt, and spices. Michelada is a light Mexican lager that packs a flavorful punch. That it does. Thanks to the addition of tomato juice, lime juice, a hint of salt, and a blend of spices. This unique collection of ingredients creates a refreshing and crisp taste that is perfect for any occasion. And I did rim it with some Hot Baron's Badass Rub.
Nice.
Which is awesome. If you want to order some, my sister-in-law was visiting yesterday, and she told me that they tried it at our house and went home and ordered a bunch. Good. And I was like, "Oh, did you use
our promo code?"
She didn't. So I told her, she goes, "But we're definitely order more." And I said, "Make sure you use Hop Snooze.
Keep using
promo
it.
code."
Yes, yes. Hop Snooze
and
promo code.
I buy it in a giant bag. So this is
I do too. My coffee rub, because that's the one I use all the time, is a giant bag.
Yeah. But I poured it in before I rimmed it. So I then put the lime around because I don't have, or I put the lemon around and like sprinkled it on. But dude, this is spicy. This is yummy. Yuck. This is great for the boat and stuff. My mom asked if I was going to send you one. I'm like, he hates them. She goes, yeah, that's why you should send him one. I'm like, why would I waste a perfectly good beer like that?
I'll try anything twice.
Have you tried the mushroom beer yet?
I know. I'll do that this week. I promise. That I will do. Right. Anyways,
so
going back to
much
Spider-Verse.
Like the Spider-Verse, this is a beer, but it's not a beer, so it's outside of the beerverse.
Well, speaking of outside the beerverse, shout out to the fact that there was a 14-year-old, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I will fix that next time. He created a Across the Spiderverse Lego trailer. Well, they brought him in, and he did the Lego Spider-Man clip. There's a scene where you get the Lego Spider-Man at the Daily Bugle, which, fun fact, I just finished building. My wife bought it for me. Super stoked. I just finished. It's like the best Lego set I've ever built, and
it's
so detailed.
So many minifigs.
It's 3 feet tall, like 26 minifigures. I didn't realize like Blade was even a minifigure there. Amazing. Wow. But yes, they're at the Daily Bugle Lego, and this 14-year-old kid animated that scene. And it was funny that Peter's like, beep, boop, beep, beep. Okay. And then this, that, and the other. But shout out to that. And then going back to Hobie real quick, in the comics, Hobie Brown was an inventive kid who created his own costume persona when he was actually the vigilante known as Prowler. So after an interaction with Spider-Man, he got set on the right path, and he became a friend and ally of Peter. In another dimension, Earth 138, which was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, he was bitten by a spider, irradiated by illegal waste dumping, and became Spider-Man. And we call him Spider-Punk. He refers to himself as the radioactive suicide machine, aiming to fight against President Ozzy Osbourne's corporation and political regime.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Yes. If you're a fan of punk music, his first solo comic is the Spider-Verse issue number 2, The Edge of Spider-Verse number 1, written by Jed McKay, where they reframe the music and political movement of the 70s into like edgy Spider-Man stories. Now in the
That's
film,
amazing.
he's very much the same, and he's arguably the best because he ends up giving Gwen because he quits after the scene where Miles breaks out. He's like, I quit. She drops his little wrist thing. Who Gwen gets it because I didn't realize.
Does it have a name? Multiverse Traveler Machine,
something like that. And I didn't realize that when I watched Into the Spider-Verse this weekend, the whole reason they're calling Miles an anomaly, like he shouldn't exist, is because the Spider 42 came from a different universe.
Yeah, that was a cool twist.
I did not.
You didn't catch it when you were watching the movie?
And Into the Spider-Verse, I didn't pay attention to the fact that the spider glitches until this weekend when I rewatched it. And the spider glitches. And I was like,
I remember seeing that, but I didn't even think about that. Holy shit. So they planned this from the get-go.
Yes, which leads to the greatest twist. It's like Empire Strikes Back levels twist, right? This is what Miles escapes. There's like this brilliant train scene. He actually goes toe to toe and beats Miguel, which is crazy. That's when Miles is like, I'm tired of everybody telling me who I am, what I should be, blah, blah, blah. He beats Miguel. He lures all of the Spider-Men out. He escapes, gets back to the headquarters, and there's this machine that scans your DNA, and it sends you back to the universe that your DNA says you're from.
Oh, but his DNA was altered because he was bit by the spider.
Now, when I was watching the movie, I was like, wait a second. Oh. That spider they established is from Earth 42. That's not Miles's universe. I'm like, this is weird. And so I didn't even think about when he gets home.
That's how he ended up.
He tells his mom that he's Spider-Man. And his mom was like, who's Spider-Man?
Well, she makes a comment about his hair. And we're like, how long was he there? Is his hair different? Yeah.
I didn't realize that this was Earth 42, even though I commented right away. I was like, wait a second, Earth 42, that scans your DNA.
We all knew something was wrong, especially because
colors were off.
Well, and Gwen's in the room and he's not. So that didn't make sense because it was clearly happening at the same time. But I wouldn't pick up.
And that's where this beautiful twist comes in, right? That's when Uncle Aaron shows up and they're going to go rob something. And I was like, interesting. And then it turns out that Uncle Aaron knew because Miles has the braids and he has a bit of a Dominican accent, which is a callback to earlier in the movie when Miles is like, how do you know he's not Dominican?
Because he's actually Puerto Rican.
Earth 42. He's in the wrong Earth because the spider DNA was from the wrong Earth. It sent him to the Earth 42 where Peter Parker doesn't exist because the spider got transported by Spot in the first movie.
But yeah, if his DNA is altered.
Amazing twist. Amazing. Yeah. Everybody's chasing after Miles and they all go to the Earth they think he's at. But it turns out he's in Earth 42. He's tied up to a punching bag. And the Prowler in this universe, it turns out to be himself. Miles is there as the Prowler, and him and Uncle Aaron are working together. There's no Spider-Man.
Logan hated him as the Prowler. He's like, I don't like him.
It was a nuts reveal. And then you realize like, oh, Gwen's at the wrong place. Oh, shit. Everybody's at the wrong place. And then that's when we get that really cool sequence of, all right, guys, we have Spider Noir, Spider Ham, and we have, Patir and the crew is there and they're going to go find Miles now. This movie's now leaves at this cliffhanger and I wasn't ready. I would have watched that movie for 4 more hours, hands down. I would have watched that movie 4 more hours. Absolutely insane. Crazy twist. I didn't think. What did you think? Like I didn't register it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good. I kind of wish Logan hadn't been there because I was more so like paying, not more so, but I was paying attention to him a little bit. But no, a lot of it, and I was having to explain some of it to Brielle after she had questions, and I was like,
Oliver did too. He was like, I don't understand how this, and I was like, all right, I'll explain it to you in the car.
Yeah, it's not fully a kid's movie, but even that, like, I didn't realize why he got sent to the other universe at first. But talking to you, like, that makes complete sense.
Earth 42 because the spider. And I was like,
I do remember the spider glitching because we rewatched that movie last week, but I didn't think anything of it.
I watched it this weekend and I caught the spider glitching. I was like, oh.
Yeah. But I mean, them not telling him, it makes sense because they wanted to protect him. But so the scene, though, where he does prevent the canon event from happening on Dopender's Spider-Man thing, and they all started, like, Logan started clapping in the theater. And I was like, Logan, he goes, that felt like a good time to clap. Like,
I mean, respect
You're not wrong.
But you're not wrong, kid. It was incredible. This movie, to me, in my opinion, is my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time so far.
I still got to go No Way Home.
Until Beyond the Spider-Verse shows up. But I think this movie was better than No Way Home, in my opinion, by a mile. It wasn't even close either. The way that they, like, all the characters, this movie is about family. It's about finding your place. Like,
it was nice how they intertwined the
Why didn't you say interwove?
interwove. I
Haha.
think actually that might have been where we were mentioning before the Aaron and Prowler, and is
Yeah.
MCU Donald Glover.
Okay. Well, did you realize that the timeline they initially showed before showing the Spider-Verse timeline was the MCU's multiverse?
Well, they mentioned Doctor Strange.
Exactly. And then, of course, we saw Toby, a flashback to Uncle Ben dying with Toby, and then
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield live action. So I feel like we're going to get a live action.
We never actually saw Tom Holland.
No.
We just
I will
heard
say
about
real
him.
quick that Miles's roommate was playing Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. Just an FYI, like that was a cool little like nod. But, yeah, the timeline that they showed initially, the multiverse, is the MCU multiverse that we've seen in Loki and stuff. So
they did the branches. It was just like Loki
before they showed the Spider-Man, and so I think this movie intertwines with the end. I think this movie somehow loosely
has
connected, which means I think Sony and Disney and Marvel are
working together,
deeply connected, which means we're going to get a lot more. So we already know that they're developing a Miles Morales movie. We already know that they're developing a Spider-Man 4 with Zendaya and Tom Holland. So I think we're going to start seeing probably Venom and all these other spinoffs kind of tie into the MCU. That's my bet.
What is the one we're getting with Quicksilver?
We're getting Madam Web. We're getting Kraven the Hunter. And they've talked about other ones. But I think now showing the MCU timeline in this Sony standalone, nothing to do with the MCU film, I think this means that we're going to start getting the Sony Spider-Man universe starting to connect with the MCU Spider-Verse.
I mean, it makes complete sense between What If and Multiverse and Kang.
Of course.
Even with DC, they connected all of it in the WB shows. Like, you know, you have multiverses. Agreed. You can do whatever the frick you want.
No, agreed. So, yeah,
just makes sense.
That's my thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this review up?
The artwork, holy shit, artwork was just phenomenal.
God bless. It took 5 years for this movie to come out since the first one, and it was every second.
Reasonably so. You could screenshot any fucking second from that movie and print it and put it on
shout out to the artists, the animators, everybody who worked on this film, because it was one of the most visually pleasing movies that I've ever watched. The way that they've bled in different colors and told a story with the use of the colors bleeding into each other.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
The colors made so much of an impact. And Hobie with this Spider-Man as well. Like when he's like, "Good for you taking a dump on the establishment." Yes. Like that was cute too. But
the best.
My final thought is, I saw this with my kids who are 6, 10, 19, the 19-year-old's boyfriend, my mother who's in her early 60s, and everybody loved it.
There was something for everybody. We had Spectacular Spider-Man, we had the Spider Car, we had everybody show up in this movie.
God, I laughed when the Spider Car came out.
Yeah, we had everything. And this movie was for everybody, no matter the age range.
You take different things away from it. Like that's all you bring different things to it and you take different things out of it, but it was enjoyable for all of us.
It was. God. We have to wait till March 29th, folks. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch this. I need this movie.
No, we did Infinity War to Endgame. We can do this.
That's true. We can do it. Stay strong. I can't wait for this movie. I want to rewatch this movie ASAP, and it's beautiful. So let us know.
We can do a recap next year before the third one comes out.
Let us know what you guys think about this movie, what you loved, what you didn't. Drop it. Join our Discord. Again, link is in the bio of this episode. And next week, we are going to be back reviewing season 3 and really the whole series of Ted Lasso with our good friend Richard Nebbins from the MCU Direct. He's coming on to join us again. We're going to talk Ted Lasso, one of the most wholesome shows out there. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers.